Oh yes, of course. I'm in his country at the end of the day. Well, I consider Slavoj Žižek to be a brilliant thinker of semi-finished thoughts, which is a great role. I enjoy very much the way he thinks. I rarely agree with his conclusions when he gets a little bit too political or too economic. I don't think this is his key role. I take him as a sort of a psychoanalyst and cultural critique of the system. And I must say, I've read many of his books and followed very many of his, of course, frequent, video debates. And but I also had this debate with him. I said, okay, but do you have some alternative? Which I know is an unfair question to the point, but on the other hand, otherwise you're only doing what I call soft porn criticism. You're fucking the system with a condom. You don't want children to be born from your criticism because of course you are afraid, and these are using his own words, that you will, with trying to get the dirty water and keep the baby, we might actually get rid of the baby and keep the dirty water. And also how much every system can be criticized for inconsistencies. Communist system, Christian system, atheist system, also capitalist system. But capitalist system seems to be sort of in demand for that. And you're making the system stronger by criticizing and making it appear that there actually is a solution. If we actually knew that there is no solution, perhaps, and again, this is in his logic, the system would collapse faster. So again, yes, very enjoyable, very pleasant. He brings philosophy into general audience and has brilliant observations. But I find him quite inspiring in his methodology rather than with conclusion. But it's okay. I mean, if a person doesn't have at least 2 or 3 completely conflicting answers in his head, that person is a half-wit. No, you should have contradictions inside of you all the time. This is the role of questions, by the way. A lot of people think that questions are here for us to find an answer. Sometimes, yes, why not? But I think the role of questions is there's a more important role of questions, and that is for them to be. Just to be. At the back of your mind, I'm not so sure I have a question. Doesn't mean that you have, but you at least, there is a beautiful song by David Bowie, which there is a line, "Thank you for hesitating." You did a bad thing, but at least you hesitated. And I fear people who don't have any questions, who don't hesitate. And Slavoj Žižek is very good in bringing questions exactly into the things that we think that we are absolutely certain, which is the role of philosophy. And I know a lot of Slovenians don't like him. This, I think, is quite typical. It happens, I think, everywhere. And also the professional philosophers very often don't like him. But I think this is he's sort of, in a way, I'm trying to do a little bit, I'm making fun of economics. I would never be rude enough to make fun as an economist out of sociology or out of philosophy or out of psychology. I have my own criticisms towards psychoanalysis, but I take what you guys tell me, I take it seriously. But I make fun of economics. If I'd be a philosopher, I would probably be making fun of philosophy. In a way, I think we even are looking for sort of this existentialist revolution in economics, because also before existentialism was born, philosophy got reduced to analytical philosophy, where there is nothing wrong with analytical philosophy, to the point that the whole realm of philosophy was taken analytical and it was detached from people, and nobody really, the philosophers were living in their own little bubble. Then came Kierkegaard and Sartre and other existentialists who were trying to ask the human questions again. And I think this is also perhaps what I'm trying to do, is bring a little bit of existentialism into the analysis of economics and show that while there is nothing fundamentally wrong, well, doesn't have to be anything fundamentally wrong with the analytic approach. It has its very strong advantages, which we are all aware of, but nobody talks about the disadvantages. So I try to talk about the disadvantages and to bring about some sort of existentialism in economics, the room to be able to ask other questions as well. I think that the digital world is really the next evolutionary step. Maybe it will be possible in some time to completely download the desires and supplies. You will be able to do, even now most of us could do their work online almost all the time. You don't really need to be in the office, you don't really need to be with the person. So it's even called motherboard. So maybe in the future, we always have an idea that existence is connected with a body, but computer programs also have an existence, a will of their own, if you want, but they're not connected to any particular body. In this way, it's actually interesting if, of course, I like to do these sort of mergers. If you combine sort of, let's say, religious or spiritual terminology, let's say Jesus, Buddha, and all these, what they were talking about, and you connect it with the internet, you get interesting results because, on the realm of internet, there is no more males and females. You can be what size you want, you can be in what age you want. You are not suddenly limited by economic factors because it only takes little to keep the body alive biologically. The rest of that will be on an ideological level. So perhaps this is somewhere where mankind will move, especially when Earth or something will be endangered. Then this sort of upload into the cloud, which needs fraction of energy and can travel, and also you have immortality. So all these things that the ancient masters talked about. If you connect that with the digital fantasy, you get an interesting story. I'm not saying that it will happen like this, but it's few people connected. For example, Jesus never said the kingdom of heaven is in you. He said the kingdom of heaven is among you. And that's a big difference because if you look for the kingdom inside, you will never find it because it was never there, is not there, and will not be there. The kingdom of heaven is between, like internet. Or like United Nations, that not here or there, it has a head office, but United Nations or democracy is like everywhere in the democratic world. So this emphasis of the spiritual is also something like Plato talked about. He was always of the opinion that the soul or the spirit transcends the matter. And he would be very excited if he lived today because economy is going exactly in that direction. And what I'm trying to do is just to prolong, if we have time here, and abstractness here, you can see that the line is quite clear. So my question is, let's prolong the line and let's try to imagine how will the world look like, or let's try to find convincing argumentation that we will not go more abstract and more digital. Yeah, this is something that will be extremely interesting because the study of economics is basically based on scarcity. Yeah, so what happens in the situation where you actually have no longer scarcity? So like, for example, the institution of bankruptcy, which we have as a part of the capitalist system, that has run bankrupt. We've bankrupted bankruptcy. We no longer allow firms the whole institution has gone bankrupt. So, in a similar way, we have sort of exhausted this topic that you talk about. Yeah, so it's giving us a lot of friends. Facebook, you can have 20 lovers, and you can have 300, 3,000, or even infinite number of friends. Everybody can befriend you on Facebook. This is just in other words, if you have 100 friends or 100,000 friends, it doesn't take any extra energy from you. You just put your holiday posts there. So it's given you more friends, but then how many times have you written a letter or an email to a friend that's longer than one paragraph? We used to do that. Between friends, when we had 5 or 6 friends, we would write letters. It would take a week before they reach them, and then if they answered that same day, it would take a week to get back. So just to say hi took 2 weeks. And then when email or this digital world was introduced, it didn't lead to more letters being written, ironically. And so, yes, the whole definition of friendship is changing a little bit. So, and the whole digital age, the original promise was you will have more time. Yeah, because Golden Drum is very much connected with the golden age of economics, and that is something that all the previous systems tried to really create, a place where you don't have to rush. Because biologically speaking, that behavior to demand more and eat more and have more has been very successful. perhaps now we're coming to a point where that behavior is no longer not only useful, but it's no longer even beneficial. So there's a nice little example talking about golden drums, also about the golden age, or golden cage, if you just add C, which is also something that there's this Chinese story about heaven and hell. So in hell, tables full of food, but your chopsticks are so big that you can't put them into your mouth. So you're constantly starving in the situation of abundance. Now heaven, same thing. Tables full of abundance, even the chopsticks are the same size. Nobody can fit the chopsticks into his own mouth, but people feed each other. And if the question is the following, if the society is structured, and I think it's becoming more and more interconnected, if the society is structured as an image of people of having too much chopsticks, not being able to call my mother without having to employ 100 people, lawyers, judges, courts in between, if the description of the society is this situation of the Chinese heaven and hell, then a much more cooperative and much more useful and efficient and even more clever is to feed each other. But but it's a risk. If I feed you, nothing guarantees me that you will feed me. But somehow I believe that we human beings can do that, but we should stop teaching that we are egoists. We should stop saying that human beings are this and that, because what we teach that we are, we also will believe that we are. So let's imagine that this golden age, economically speaking, technically speaking, same thing, only human attitude is different. So I hope that, not only in the golden age, in the sort of a Chinese mythology, but also here at the Golden Drum, you will be able to sort of experience and promote the idea that we are all, nobody is an island anymore, that we're all part of an inland. And if a little part of me is washed away, a little part of you disappears also. And it's you can see this nicely in the development of European Union. Suddenly Greece is already not part of the market only, but also part of the family. And it is my hope that in the future the world will become solidary, not with just my own family, not with just my own members of the same nation, not with European being solidary with European, but that nations will be able to be solidary with the humanity. And this, I think, is the next step in integration. It was families, clans, villages, cities, nations, supranations. European Union, United States of America, China, Japan are all superpowers or supranations. Something we have not seen in Africa. Also, perhaps one of the reasons for these skirmishes is because their political coordination hasn't yet reached the area that would suffice. So we live in this is the idea of Michio Kaku. We live in a situation where we can destroy the world, but we don't have a global area where to solve problems. So that's my next sort of, again, vision, that it will go from European Union, from America, it will actually become some sort of global responsibility where the world will truly start caring for each other and not just for its own kind.